You ever notice how a single name can change the air in a room? One whisper, one signature on a paper, and suddenly, eyes widen, conversations stop, the hum of life goes dead. That's power. Not the kind you earn in a boardroom or collect in your bank. No, the kind that lives in fear, the kind that makes the untouchable flinch. Tonight your name didn't just get mentioned. It struck a chord in a billionaire's mind, and the world around you froze. Fear is louder than applause. You see, people love to celebrate themselves. They love the bright lights, the clinking glasses, the pats on the back. They crave that instant warmth of attention, that hollow applause that dies the moment the spotlight moves. But fear, oh, fear doesn't die. Fear lingers. It hangs in the air like smoke from a candle no one dared to blow out. You can hear it, even when it isn't spoken. The hesitation in a step, the gulp before words leave the lips, the way eyes dart away when the truth of who holds power stares back at them. Applause fades. Fear echoes. Applause is polite, a fleeting dance of ego. Fear is permanent, and it reshapes everything around it. Think about it. Have you ever watched a room shift in an instant? One word, one action, one name whispered, and suddenly the chatter stops. The laughter dies. The air changes. It's not anger, it's not joy, it's fear. And that fear is loud, louder than any cheer, louder than any cheerleader waving palms for your ego. Fear doesn't just announce itself. It insinuates itself into the smallest cracks, into the corners where pride once stood tall. And when it grows, when it spreads, it doesn't just silence a room. It bends reality, warps the way people move, the way they think, the way they breathe. Fear has a volume no applause can ever reach, because it doesn't ask permission to exist. It imposes itself on every eye that meets yours, every mind that calculates whether crossing you is worth the risk. People think power is about money, about influence, about the way you smile at cameras while signing deals. But no, that's childish. True power is not celebrated, it is trembled at. And fear is the currency of that power. It's unspoken, unrecorded, untouchable. Yet everyone knows when it's there. You don't hear fear the way you hear laughter, but you feel it, like the tremor before an earthquake. And when a billionaire, the kind of person who thinks they are untouchable, who counts lives in spreadsheets, who calculates risks as if humans were numbers, suddenly goes silent because of you. That is a sound that shakes harder than any ovation, louder than any standing ovation thrown for a polished speech or a staged performance. Fear doesn't applaud, it watches. It waits. It weighs. It chooses its moment. And when it lands, it's louder than the cheers that come and go, the false love that comes and goes, the hollow praise that disappears with the echo of a door closing behind you. Applause can be bought, stolen, or fabricated. Fear cannot. Fear is earned with a whisper, with a stare, with a presence that refuses to bend to the norms that everyone else worships. Fear is louder than applause because it doesn't lie, it doesn't flatter, it doesn't need approval. Fear is real. Fear is raw. It exposes the cracks in confidence. It reveals who is fragile beneath the tailored suits and polished smiles. It strips away the comfort of certainty. And the irony. People run from it, but they cannot escape it. They can try to hide behind wealth, behind connections, behind social clout. But the moment they recognize it, the moment they feel it, that is the moment the world around them becomes a little quieter, a little smaller, a little theirs no longer to control. Power is felt, not given. People love to pretend it can be handed over, that a title, a signature, a seat at a table is enough to make someone powerful. They think it's about contracts, legalities, rules etched in stone. But power, true power, it isn't polite. It isn't written down. It isn't something you can buy with money or beg for in boardrooms. Power is a pulse. You feel it before you see it. You feel it in the subtle shift of a room, the way eyes flicker towards someone without them asking for attention, the way the air bends when someone who holds it simply moves. You can't give it. You can't trade it. You can't delegate it to a certificate or a fancy suit. It's a living thing. It belongs to the one who knows how to take it, how to command it, how to exist in a way that makes everyone else notice without words. Notice how the so-called powerful try to convince themselves and everyone around them that they are in control. They announce it, they decorate it, they parade it around like trophies. But you can feel the cracks in the facade. You can feel the hesitation when they speak, the slight tremor when someone challenges them, the way their voice rises just a little too fast, because they are scared it won't be enough. That isn't power. That is performance. True power doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't demand recognition. It doesn't worry about applause or agreement. True power is the quiet gravity that pulls everything toward it, the invisible hand that tilts reality without a single sound. You feel it in your gut before your brain understands it. You don't need a certificate, a crowd, or even acknowledgement. You only need to exist in a way that reminds the world it cannot ignore you. And here's the delicious irony. Those who think they have power, the billionaires, the executives, the ones who count influence like its currency, they tremble the most when they encounter someone who actually has it. They may have wealth, yes. They may have armies of lawyers, friends in high places, doors that open with their name alone. But none of that matters the moment they realize power isn't about doors or numbers or applause. It's about presence, influence, the ability to make others pause, hesitate, and question themselves. A glance, a choice, a single name on a blacklist. They feel it instantly. And in that moment, the illusion of control shatters, because they are forced to confront the undeniable truth that power is not something you inherit. Power is something you embody. It courses through you, whether they like it or not, and they cannot touch it, cannot contain it, cannot own it. You see, the people around you are constantly calculating. Every word you speak, every move you make, they measure against their own expectations, their own fears, their own need to dominate. And when they sense real power, the kind that can't be bought or handed out, they freeze. Their systems fail. Their confidence evaporates. Applause cannot compete with that. Recognition cannot compete with that. Influence, carefully cultivated over years, crumbles because true power does not beg to be acknowledged. It commands acknowledgement without asking for it. Power is felt in the shiver that runs down a spine when you enter a room. It is heard in the silence that follows your footsteps. It is seen in the unsteady handshake, the darting eyes, the sudden stiffness of a body that thought it was untouchable. It is a language everyone understands, even if they refuse to admit it. You don't need permission to be powerful. You don't need a crown, a title, or even the majority on your side. You only need the presence that reminds them that you exist, that your choices matter, that their comfort, their control, their world is no longer guaranteed. One name can silence the room. It's not just a collection of letters, not just something you answer to. It's a weapon, a signal, a shadow that stretches farther than anyone expects. People underestimate the power of recognition, the weight a single identity can carry when it is feared, respected, or simply unknown in its potential. They think that noise, chatter, influence, all of it can drown out an individual. But they forget that sometimes one name, just one, is enough to stop everything cold. A whisper can ripple through a room, bending heads, stiffening spines, halting conversations, freezing smiles midair. The absurdity of it is beautiful, isn't it? How something so small can undo everything people thought was solid. Imagine the moment. The air is thick with ambition, money, titles, ego. Everyone talking, everyone moving, everyone pretending they are untouchable. And then your name, dropped like a stone into a calm pond, and suddenly the waves are everywhere. Eyes shift, hearts skip. Someone swallows hard. Someone else fidgets with their tie. The room isn't louder, it's quieter. Not polite quiet, not respectful silence, but the kind that comes from realizing the rules have changed, the kind that comes from knowing the game has been turned upside down, and no one saw it coming. And in that silence, you feel it power. Not the kind that claps, not the kind that congratulates, not the kind that posts on social media. The kind that moves without moving, that stretches without hands, that bends the world toward itself without lifting a finger. One name, and suddenly you exist in a way no amount of money or status can replicate. People are terrified of uncertainty. They are terrified of consequences they cannot calculate. When your name appears in their world, it introduces both, and they can't help but notice. They cannot pretend it doesn't exist, cannot act as if it is inconsequential. And the beauty of it is that you don't even need to act. You don't need to yell, to threaten, to fight, to prove anything. The mere fact of your existence in that context, the mere recognition that you have entered their sphere, is enough to silence the room. That pause, that shift, that hesitation, it's louder than any speech, louder than any argument, louder than any performance designed to impress. People don't fear words alone. They fear meaning, consequence, the thing that cannot be bought or bargained with. Your name becomes that thing. And think about the psychology behind it. Humans crave control, crave predictability, crave order. The moment your name lands, the illusion of that control falters. They measure, they calculate, they reassess. And as they do, the room goes dead silent. It's a pause pregnant with every unspoken thought, every hidden fear, every realization that they are now playing by rules they did not write. That silence is your stage. That pause is your applause. And yet, unlike applause, it is not fleeting. It lingers. It echoes in their minds long after the room empties. Every glance at you, every thought about you, carries that tremor. One name, just one, has reshaped the landscape of their perception, and they are powerless to stop it. The irony is delicious. While everyone else chases validation, recognition, approval, you wield something far more potent, the ability to command attention without asking for it, to bend perception without effort, to become a presence that cannot be ignored. And it doesn't matter if they like you, respect you, or even understand you. It doesn't matter if they hate you, fear you, or envy you. The moment your name lands in the right place, the room obeys. The room goes silent. And in that silence, you are louder than anything they ever imagined. Wealth doesn't shield from vulnerability. People think it does. They think that counting zeros in a bank account, owning towers of steel and glass, driving cars that roar like thunder, signing contracts thicker than a coffin lid, somehow makes them untouchable. But it doesn't. Not even close. Money is a mask. A fragile little mask that covers insecurity and fear with a painted smile. You can't buy courage. You can't purchase respect that doesn't tremble. You can't write a check for immunity from consequences, from mistakes, from the truth that no amount of wealth can erase what you really are. Vulnerability isn't selective. It doesn't care about your net worth, your connections, your titles. It waits, patient, silent, lurking behind the silk curtains of confidence, ready to pounce when you least expect it. And the beautiful thing is, the more wealth you have, the more delicate that illusion becomes. Because the higher you climb, the further the fall. Think about the so-called untouchables. The ones who believe they've outsmarted the world, that their golden walls will keep them safe. The moment someone like you, touches the unspoken nerve, the one they've buried under numbers and contracts, everything shakes. They flinch. They hesitate. Their empire of wealth doesn't roar, it shivers. They cannot write a law to protect themselves from the sting of presence, from the ripple of influence, from the awareness that they are not, in fact, invincible. And it doesn't matter how loud their security systems are, how loyal their employees pretend to be, how carefully they script their public personas. Vulnerability doesn't knock before it enters. It slips in through the cracks of ego, through the unguarded moment, through the gaze of someone who refuses to bend or bow. There's a delicious irony here. People spend their lives acquiring wealth to feel safe, to feel powerful, to feel untouchable. They think that money can replace respect, that it can silence fear, that it can erase consequences. But all it does is make them bigger targets. The higher the tower, the further the fall. The thicker the walls, the louder the echo of silence when someone finally challenges the illusion. And the more they believe they are protected, the more they underestimate the one thing that actually matters: the ability to act, to influence, to strike fear without even trying. Wealth can build empires, yes, but it cannot armor a soul. It cannot stop the realization that someone else, someone unexpected, someone unafraid, has the power to change the narrative, to rewrite the rules, to collapse their carefully constructed world with nothing but presence and intent. Look at the moments when the room goes dead silent, when a billionaire freezes, when a CEO hesitates mid-sentence. It's not the lack of money that terrifies them. It's the awareness that their money cannot protect them, that a ledger cannot shield them, that their army of influence, their fortress of wealth, is irrelevant against someone who understands the rules they forgot to play by. And in that moment, vulnerability isn't abstract, it's palpable. You can see it in the twitch of a hand, the flicker of an eye, the sudden rigidity of posture. You can hear it in the pause, the hesitation, the way silence grows heavy enough to crush the air. Money is irrelevant when someone steps into the space between fear and reality, when someone reminds them that their greatest asset, wealth, is also their greatest illusion. And isn't it funny how people spend their lives trying to hide from it? To buy their way out, to control perception, to create layers upon layers of protection. They can try to obscure themselves behind public image, behind philanthropy, behind influence, behind teams of people who swear loyalty. None of it works. Vulnerability finds its way in the cracks of pride, the gaps in certainty, the moments they forget to breathe. It is patient, it is silent, it is inevitable. And when it strikes, when it lands, when someone like you steps into the room and forces them to confront it, the world tilts just enough for everyone to notice. Wealth cannot save them. Titles cannot save them. Ego cannot save them. All that remains is the raw, unfiltered truth that power and fear are far stronger currencies than money, and that vulnerability spares no one. Boldness writes its own rules. Most people spend their lives obeying the rules of others, pretending the lines drawn by someone else are sacred, thinking that compliance is safety, that following the path laid out in boardrooms, offices, and society's polite corridors will protect them from consequence. But boldness doesn't ask permission. Boldness laughs at the rules, because it knows the rules were never meant for it. Boldness doesn't wait for approval, for validation, for the nod of the powerful or the applause of the crowd. Boldness acts, moves, and lives in a way that forces the world to take notice, whether the world likes it or not. It doesn't tiptoe. It doesn't whisper. It doesn't hesitate. It steps into the room, into the chaos, into the fire, and the fire bends around it, not because it must, but because it has no choice. Think about the people who cling to rules, who hide behind protocol and procedure, who treat safety like a god. They mistake predictability for strength. They mistake obedience for intelligence. They mistake the illusion of control for reality. And when boldness enters the equation, when someone refuses to play by their expectations, refuses to bow to their authority, refuses to exist within their comfortable boundaries, they crumble. Their systems, their hierarchies, their empires built on conformity and fear, suddenly irrelevant. Boldness doesn't negotiate. Boldness doesn't seek permission. Boldness rewrites the equation entirely, and the world scrambles to keep up, to understand, to contain what cannot be contained. Boldness is louder than wealth, louder than connections, louder than influence bought and bartered over decades. Because wealth can be hoarded, influence can be calculated, connections can be cultivated, but boldness cannot be bought. It cannot be negotiated. It cannot be contained. Boldness is a pulse, a heartbeat that refuses to sync with the clock of someone else's design. It is the audacity to say what others whisper, to act when others hesitate, to exist in a way that cannot be ignored. And the beauty is that when boldness meets resistance, when it collides with fear, the reaction is electric. The room shifts. The air thickens. The walls tremble. People flinch not because boldness is loud, but because boldness is undeniable. And here's the delicious irony. Most people think boldness is reckless, that it is chaos without purpose, that it is destruction without construction. But true boldness is neither reckless nor careless. True boldness understands the stakes, measures the risk, but refuses to let the fear of consequence dictate action. It knows that every hesitation is a surrender, every compliance is a leash, every bow to expectation is a chain. Boldness doesn't care about the comfort of others. Boldness doesn't ask if it's convenient, polite, or proper. Boldness is a reckoning, a challenge, a presence that forces reality to rearrange itself around it. And those who underestimate it, the billionaires, the executives, the self-important, find themselves caught in its wake, unable to escape the ripple that spreads from a single act, a single choice, a single refusal to obey. Boldness is contagious too. Once someone sees it, truly sees it, once they feel the weight of it in a room, in a conversation, in a glance, they begin to reconsider their own boundaries. They begin to question the rules they obey blindly. They begin to feel the pulse of possibility, the thrill of defiance, the intoxicating truth that they are not bound by fear, by expectation, by tradition. Boldness doesn't just change the person who wields it. It shakes the world around them. It rewrites perceptions, recalibrates respect, and forces even the most confident to recognize that control is an illusion and audacity is reality. And isn't it ironic? People worship safety, predictability, approval, and yet boldness, the very thing that terrifies them, is the thing that commands the most attention, the most influence, the most power. It doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't whisper, "May I?" It doesn't hide behind polite compliance. Boldness moves, acts, asserts, and in doing so, reminds everyone who dares to look that the rules exist to be rewritten, the boundaries exist to be tested, and the world bends for those who are unafraid to claim their own space, to create their own narrative, and to live in a way that refuses to ask for approval. Respect comes from impact, not status. People spend their lives chasing titles, degrees, accolades, and awards, thinking that if the letters behind their name are impressive enough, the world will bow, the room will applaud, the whispers will turn to admiration. But that's a lie. Status is a costume, a mask people wear to convince themselves and others that they matter. It can be faked, borrowed, bought, or inherited. Respect, the real kind, the kind that sticks, the kind that reverberates in the spine and lingers in the air long after someone has left, cannot be purchased. It comes from impact, from the ability to act in a way that changes the rules, rewires perception, and forces the world to take notice whether it wants to or not. Respect doesn't check your resume. It doesn't glance at your bank account. It feels your presence, measures your influence, and decides if you are worthy in its own chaotic, unrelenting way. Impact isn't polite. It isn't polite in a way that status pretends to be. Titles are polite. Impact is dangerous. Influence is polite. Impact is unavoidable. Status can get you invited to rooms. Impact can make the room hold its breath. You see it in the way people flinch when something unexpected happens. When someone refuses to conform, when someone who should be inconsequential suddenly disrupts their world with a glance, a word, or a decision. That's impact. It doesn't require explanation. It doesn't beg for acknowledgement. It arrives, and the world adjusts. Respect comes from that. Not the certificates on the wall, not the awards on the shelf, not the introductions that precede you. Respect is earned when your existence alone changes the calculus of the room, when your actions ripple outward and leave an imprint that cannot be ignored. Think about the so-called leaders, the billionaires, the executives, the ones who assume their positions command respect. They misunderstand the world because they have confused attention for reverence. People notice them, yes. People listen, yes. But do they respect? Do they tremble, pause, reconsider their assumptions when these people speak? Rarely. Status without impact is a stage set with no audience. It's a costume worn over emptiness. The instant someone comes along and refuses to play by those expected rules, refuses to bow to the carefully curated image of power, that's when respect is born. And it doesn't whisper. It doesn't wait. It announces itself in the pause, the glance, the subtle flinch, the shift in energy that no amount of status can simulate. Impact can be gentle or violent, precise or chaotic, strategic or instinctual, but it is always real. It cannot be faked. It cannot be bought. It cannot be borrowed. You either leave a mark on the world, or the world will forget you, no matter what you carry in your pocket, no matter what letterhead you sign, no matter what doors open at your name. And the terrifying, intoxicating thing about impact is that it bypasses expectation. People spend decades trying to understand influence, trying to calculate respect, trying to manipulate admiration through charm, money, or image. None of it works the way impact works. Impact is unpredictable, immediate, and merciless in its truth. It doesn't care about who you know, what you own, or how polite you are. It cares about what you do, what you are willing to risk, and what the world cannot ignore. And when impact lands in a room, when it hits with the precision or chaos of someone who refuses to follow the expected path, respect follows like a shadow. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It doesn't send invitations. It doesn't demand compliance. It settles quietly, but it is felt everywhere. You see it in the way people measure their words, in the way they glance toward you without realizing it, in the subtle acknowledgement that you exist outside the boundaries they thought were unbreakable. You don't need status to claim it. You don't need titles to enforce it. You only need the audacity to act, the courage to disrupt, the patience to let the world catch up to your presence. Impact writes the rules. Impact bends perception. Impact silences doubt. Respect follows impact like a shadow that refuses to leave, like a pulse that won't stop, like the echo of a name that cannot be ignored. And that is why the richest, most titled, most celebrated people in any room can still tremble when confronted with someone whose existence alone carries the weight of consequence, whose choices ripple further than their wealth, whose presence forces acknowledgement that no title, no status, no ceremony could ever command. Chaos reveals true strength. People spend their lives clinging to order, to structure, to the illusion that if everything is neat, if every step is calculated, if every risk is measured, then they will be safe. But chaos doesn't care about safety. Chaos doesn't knock politely before entering. It doesn't ask permission. It crashes through the walls of certainty, rips apart the illusion of control, and leaves only one question behind: who is strong enough to survive it? True strength isn't found in calm waters or in smooth operations. True strength is forged in the storm, in the moments when everything you thought was solid begins to crumble, when the world spins faster than you can calculate, when the rules evaporate and nothing remains but instinct, presence, and the audacity to act. Think about it. People fear chaos because it exposes them, because it strips away their illusions, because it reveals the cracks they spent decades hiding behind polite smiles and careful facades. And that's exactly why chaos is so powerful. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care if you have wealth, titles, influence, or armies of people at your command. Chaos doesn't bend for anyone. It reveals the truth in a way that is merciless and absolute. In the middle of chaos, hesitation is fatal, indecision is weakness, and courage is the only currency that matters. Those who have never faced it, who have never stared into the void, while the world around them collapses, tremble at its arrival. Those who embrace it, those who laugh into the storm, who move with it, who understand it as a tool rather than a threat, they rise. They become untouchable in ways money, status, and rules could never buy. Chaos is a mirror. It strips away the costumes, the masks, the carefully constructed personas. It shows you who is really capable, who can adapt, who can bend without breaking, who can seize opportunity in the fire while others scream at the smoke. And the beautiful, terrifying thing is that the stronger you are, the more chaos can magnify your power. When the room goes silent, when people freeze, when the predictable world is suddenly unpredictable, it is strength that dictates the outcome. Weakness is exposed immediately, and it is devoured. Those who have hidden behind conventions and comfort crumble first. Chaos doesn't wait. Chaos doesn't care. Chaos simply is. And in that existence, it reveals the ones who can wield it as a weapon, the ones who can move through it like water, the ones whose presence alone bends it to their advantage. True strength is also psychological. Chaos tests the mind before the body. It measures patience, perception, cunning, audacity. Those who fear the unpredictable falter because they are enslaved by expectation, by the rules of a world that no longer exists. Those who embrace it, who lean into the madness, who understand the rhythm of disorder, they manipulate it, dance with it, twist it into a tool that amplifies their presence. In chaos, the smallest action carries massive weight. A glance, a step, a word, each one amplified, each one potent, because the world is off balance, because the walls are trembling, because the air itself is charged with uncertainty. And those who can operate in that moment, who can exploit it, who can strike while others hesitate, they are stronger than anyone who thinks strength is measured in calm and comfort. The irony is delicious. People spend decades seeking control, seeking certainty, fearing unpredictability, and yet chaos is the only true test of who can survive, who can dominate, who can endure. Chaos doesn't flatter, it doesn't reward, it doesn't negotiate. It punishes the unprepared and elevates the audacious. And when someone understands this, when someone learns to move through it, to shape it, to use it as both shield and weapon, they no longer fear the room, the boardroom, the crowd, or the billionaire who thinks they are untouchable. Chaos bends for them because they are stronger, faster, sharper, braver, and more alive in the storm than anyone else. Strength is revealed in the eye of the storm, in the silence after the chaos lands, in the way the world looks at someone who refuses to break when everything else does. And that is why chaos is louder than order, more telling than applause, and more permanent than any title, any fortune, any mask of respectability.